Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the International Business Growth Radio Network, the world of business at your fingertips. I am Jason Wally Waldron, your host here, and I am honored to be joined again by Mandi Ellefson, the founder of Hands Off CEO. Mandi, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Wally.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few minutes ago, we had a very cool conversation really about sort of the growth in mindset and the growth of awareness that has to happen as you evolve from a founder who is all just push and grinding into more of a CEO mindset. And we invited people to actually figure out how to spend more time away from the business so they can come back as that person. We're going to dive into this a lot more in a few minutes, but the idea and the idea is to come back and become more effective and really leverage everything that you've built. And so I want to move a little bit here. There's a number of foundations to profitably scale services. And a good portion of the folks who listen to this podcast are in some sort of industrial services or really, some type of service where it's partial service, partial custom manufacturing, and all this other stuff. And so I'm very curious from your perspective, what are the foundations to profitably scale services? Let's just break it down one by one.
Well, the foundations to profitably scale services is that you have to have a really good offer.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem with services is that they can be very hands-on, very custom, and there's also not a lot of profit margin in them. So we need to deal with each one of those constraints. So you mentioned constraints in the last one,
right?
And constraints absolutely do make you better. And I was a graphic designer in my last career, and one of the things that you learn is that when you create within constraints, it creates a massively better design. So we can use the constraints within the service model and flip it on its head.
Okay.
And use that to be able to position and become a top 1% in the whole market.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Why would someone want to be the top 1% of that market?
Well, I think that it would be fair to say that almost everyone wants to be the top 1% of the market.
Sure.
Because you get the highest fees.
Yep.
You can pick and choose who you want to work with. The top of the market gets to pick and choose from the top talent because they want to work with you, and you're going to have a higher profit margin. You're going to be able to command. You'll be able to have better cash flow because when you have a really good offer and you have a wait list of people potentially waiting to work with you, you get to say, well, you know what? How we work together is that we take all the cash up front, or we take this chunk of cash up front.
Yep.
And that solves the cash flow issues in a service company. It solves the profitability when you can say, well, you know what? I understand that the industry average is a third of what we charge, but we're 10 to 20 times better than the industry. So because we're actually delivering real results.
Right.
So being the 1% is pretty amazing. But the good news is that most people are not willing to do what it takes to become the 1% because they're too lazy.
Sure.
One of them is they're too lazy. And the other one is that, like, going back to the mindset we talked about, they don't actually believe it's possible.
Yep.
And the biggest thing that actually costs businesses the most money is the limited view of the CEO, the limited mindset. And it does get hampered by the how busy that they are in the company. And they have like this very myopic view about their business, and they can't see beyond it. They can't see beyond the end of the road really because they're too close to it. But the biggest thing that will allow them to grow more is for them to actually see further. And, I see this all the time. One conversation alone, now someone doubles the growth that they're going for in the next 12 months. One conversation.
Yeah. Well, I want to unpack a lot of these things here and really try to map them to things that we see here, because you just shared so many golden nuggets there in about 90 seconds. And the first thing that was so impactful to me as I received it was the idea of really looking at your offers and getting back to, is this a best in class offer? Is this actually going to move the needle? And back to what you just said there, that requires some space for thinking, right? And right? Are you really serving the clients and their emergent needs and all these other things? And I want to speak to the audience a little bit here. We're at the front end of what's called the reshoring initiative. And the short version of it is we've got to copy and paste Taiwan into Mexico before the missiles start flying at some point. Furthermore, we've got to create good jobs in this country. This is all manufacturing stuff that is backed up at the highest levels of, the federal government. And this is a strategic plan for the next 30 years of the United States of America starting right now. So do you want to take advantage of that wave and ride that wave? Or do you want to just keep doing what you've been doing? Further, back on the constraints side, how are you going to get 100% or more of that work done with, 60% of the workforce? So this is the importance of that creativity, right? And so there's a wave you want to ride. And oh, by the way, whatever you did before 2020, 21 isn't going to work anymore. And so, kind of setting that big picture context, I want to bring it back into, that's the importance of understanding first the offer so that you can fund your growth. And then what happens from there?
Well, I want to actually point out something that you just shared. So
Sure.
You actually demonstrated how you're the top 1% just in the last few sentences, and about how you mapped out here are the constraints that we're dealing with right here. There's a better way, and painting a vision about how we can do more with less. So by you understanding that and actually talking about what is actually going on for the listeners here.
Yeah.
Now that is about a bigger problem and a bigger vision, as opposed to we're offering, or we do SEO services, or we do marketing services, or we do or we have a manufacturing company that creates these widgets.
Right. Yeah. I was at breakfast with a client of ours just last Thursday, and we went into this type of discussion, and there's a very real possibility that by taking his business from, he's about 40 million to 100 million right now, and helping his family literally exit from that business, third generation family. But by going on that journey over there, the big change that is very likely to take place that we were talking about was solving all of those problems we just discussed there, essentially bringing in that acumen and that idea of what we call conscious stakeholder capitalism. And we can solve a lot of problems, like unions become irrelevant and all sorts of other stuff. And it's probably getting into the edge of, a little bit too far for this conversation. But we were getting that granular in that context of the next 30 years because somebody has to step up and be a part of that, right? And obviously at Exitology, we want to be part of that. Obviously, Hands Off CEO wants to be a part of that. We're inviting all of these listeners. If you want to be a part of that, please, you can go to exitology.com, click contact us, reach out. We need everybody that wants to be a part of that to be a part of that, right?
Right. And so you're casting a bigger vision. And I love that. And how wealth is created is by solving bigger problems.
Yes.
By solving bigger problems. So, and I wish I could requote Elon Musk the way he shares about this. He had a very succinct quote that I would butcher if I tried, but he was sharing about how you make a lot of money by solving very expensive, difficult to solve problems. And when our businesses are centered around solving bigger problems and doing it better than anyone else, that's where we get into the place where there is very expansive profit margins because no one else knows how to do it. The reality is everyone else is dealing with the same constraints.
Right.
But if you find a better way, then you have a profit advantage.
Exactly. And I want to map that back to that's the importance of the creativity, right? So if you get creative by going fishing extra times, go fishing extra times. If you get creative by whatever that is for you, right? Laying on the beach and, I don't care what that is, but if you are really starting to feel what we're talking about here and you want to be a part of that 1%, you want to be a best in class business and you want to help solve all these huge problems, that's the importance of finding a space to be creative in and then a structure to put that into.
Well, and I think that's helpful to be creative, but no matter how much creativity a person has, if it's like we need to have an external outside party pushing us to think bigger.
Yes, we do.
And I know that's something that you're very good at, Wally, as well, because as I was mentioning before, like one single conversation can help you see something in a different way where now instead of going after $1 million deals, maybe you're going after 20, $60 million deals. That's a real story, actually. One of our clients who's looking at, you know what, we can do $1 million deals, but the 60 million, you know what, we need a team of 7 people to do that. So he had put that constraint in front of him. And after going through and seeing this from a different place, now him and his team are going after these $60 million deals with the exact team. And this, by the way, is more of a manufacturing company example.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love that you're saying that, and it is important. You need a structure to push this creativity through. And actually, I'm looking at the Hands Off CEO book right now, and there's a really great resource on page 86 and 87. So I encourage you folks to pick up this book. And it talks about the value versus scalability matrix. And what's so cool about it is it shows the difference between amateurs and unicorns, and then somewhere in between. And ultimately, you want to figure out, how can I be scalable? How can I be valuable? And how can I be, frankly, monetarily rewarded for those two things? And that's the power of putting yourself into that 1%. And there's a lot of those structures to it. So if somebody is listening to this right now, there's probably more questions than they're going to have answers as we go along, at least at this juncture. How would you kind of wrap up what we just discussed?
Well, how I would wrap up is to be looking at ways to expand. The value equation that you just talked about. Most people, they scale by saying, how can we make this as simple as possible so we can scale it? Instead, we want to be looking at, how do we solve this problem most effectively and then scale that? And that's more difficult to do, but the rewards are significantly higher, and it's worth doing.
Awesome. Well, all right. So that's a great segue into our next section here. What we're going to talk about in this next section is we're going to put some pen to paper a little bit here and talk about how we can actually double your profits after we've found that profit sweet spot. So if everything here didn't feel quite real enough for you, it's about to get really real. So we're going to take a short 2-minute break here. You've been listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the International Business Growth Radio Network. I invite any of our listeners to apply for an Exitology Grow to Exit diagnostic session. Just click on our website. You'll see the button right there, and we'll see you on the other side.